Hi, today I want to show you how you can implement Sign In with Apple inside of your application. It's super simple, you don't need much to set it up, but you do need to have an Apple developer account. So let's get right started with it. So first of all, as mentioned, you want to have an Apple developer account. You can go here to Apple Developer and you'll be able to then set everything up for your application. Now, assuming that you already have an Apple developer account, let's continue with the next steps. We now want to go to our Nordcraft project and create a new branch called OAuth, as this is our test branch for working with OAuth. And I'm doing this on the template on the project that we have already created in the last video in the My First SaaS course. This already has Google Auth. We now want to add Login with Apple to it. And we'll be adding many more exciting authentication methods in the next few days and weeks in here. So let's close that because I did change my credit card number. They should give me that for free. Isn't that unbelievable? I made 200 videos and I still have to pay for all my plans myself. But, you know, no matter. I'll update the credit card very soon. Don't worry, Andreas. But let's continue. So now we want to, design a new button. So let's duplicate this button that we have here with continue for Google. And I'm very creative today. I'm just going to remove the URL we'll be going to because we need to set something differently up. But I'm just going to rename this now to continue with Apple. There you go. And I think Apple has a specific language that they want you to use. So you want to do sign in with Apple. There you go. So now we can go to Relume icons and get ourselves the Apple logo. So let's look for Apple. We're going to take the Apple logo, 24 pixels, and I'm going to remove the SVG we have in here and I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to, no, I want to paste it, but I don't want to convert it into CSS. Okay, let's move this up and let's see how many pixels is this logo here. That's 24. It doesn't look 24 what we have in here. Okay, it's a small 24. Let's see, are there any other, oh yeah, that's a bigger one. And it's still 24. Sometimes the icons are not 24, maybe they're like 18, but they're in a 24 container. So let's put that icon in here. Let's import that. Oh yeah, that's better. And let's move that up. Now we got sign in with Apple. There you go. And usually when you're submitting this to the App Store, you want to make sure that Apple is above Google because that could be a rejection reason if it's under Google. So sometimes I've seen interesting things. There you go. So now we got Apple over Google. I don't like the word sign in. Let's try doing continue. Continue with Apple. That looks good. Beautiful. And yeah, that looks good. I like that. So now we got the button, we got the UI going, and we have this go to URL. Now we need to get the URL to which we need to redirect to, actually set this up correctly. So if I take a look here at my good friend ChatGPT, it will first of all tell us how to register our service ID, which is something that is mandatory and that we need. But it will also at some point in here tell us how to build this URL. And if you want to figure this out yourself, if you want to follow along with the video, please feel free to make a screenshot of this here because you will need this. Also, you want to make sure that you just ask it how to do it on the server side. So with the redirect URI and not using Apple.js, that's the simplest way to set it up right here. So let's try putting this in our URL, and that's nicely formatted. That's good. And if I now were to open that, we would see that we would go to this Apple account page, which is the first step into getting this to work. So now we want to create a formula to build this URL like we're doing here with Google. With Google, we have this formula here for Google Auth, and we're creating our redirect URI. So we want to do the same thing with, we have this here with Google Auth. quite complex. We want to do the same thing now with Apple. So we do Apple OAuth. There you go. And now we have Apple OAuth. And now we want to build this URL. I'm just going to start by doing some concatenation. And I'm going to start putting the URL in here. Or actually, no, that's a bad idea. Let's go back to ChatGPT and let's start with this. So we got response type code, and I'm just going to do, let's make this a little bit more modular so it's easier to look at it. Okay, let's put this in here. That's the first part of the URL. We got authorize. Now the next step will be adding the response type. So let's take response type code, and in this example here, we are going to put the response type inside of here. Now we don't want the value, so in here I would need to put in code, and I will just add that as a string because we probably want to make that dynamic depending on, you know, how custom you want this to be and what you're planning to do with it. So let's click on here, and now we want to do response mode form post. That's the response type, and that will be fun working with that. And now inside of here, I'm going to do, and then response mode, and we're going to now take form post. And here I'm going to remove that, and then I will add a string, and I will do form post. This will be super fun. Okay, let's go back to ChatGPT. Now we will need to put our client ID inside of here, and I will be leaving that empty. Let's put that in here, client ID, and that will be empty for now. I'm just going to put a string in there so I already got the node. And then we're going to go back, and we're going to go to the redirect URI. And I need to click on plus here. I'm going to put the redirect URI in here. I'm going to add a string, and I'm going to put that in here. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to take the scope that will be name and email. That's essentially what we'll be needing in here. So let's put the scope in here, name and email, and let's do URL. They have URI. Let's decode URI. And this will be a space. Okay, I'm always forgetting if like this is a space or not. So let's have this unencoded. So this will be a space. So let's copy the scope, because now we just have the scope parameter. Okay, and then in here we will add a string. And here's what we're going to do. The scope needs to be the scope separated by a space. So I'm going to add an array here with the scope. The first one will be name, the second one will be email. And then I'm going to make a join filter to join them together. And then the separator will be a space. And then I will do URI encode. So it will then put the proper parameter inside of here, as you can see. Now we'll continue with the next part. The next part will be now removing that part and clearing that, and we will take a look at ChatGPT. That will be the state. That will be some random string. Most of the times we can just leave it empty. I just put something random in it. You don't really need it to say anything. So the state in this will be app. There you go. This is just very simple. Or let's do web app. There you go. It doesn't need to be, it's not really important. You could leave it out. But now we have a few things that need to be dynamic inside of here, and we want to work correctly with those. So as you can see, we got the response type code. So response type. So let's add some arguments. Response, and actually I can just copy and paste that. That will be simpler. So let's copy the response type. That will be a string, and the example will be code. Okay, and then I can go inside of here. I will do an if statement, so we always have fallback. I will do if response type size greater than No, actually, I can do it even better. I can do if response type equals code, then I'm going to just return the code. And if it returns, if it is anything else besides code, no, but then if it's empty, no. We will need to do not equal. If the response type does not equal code, but then it could be empty. No, this is a bad idea. This is a terrible idea. Let's go back to size. Okay. If the size of this is greater than 0, then I'm going to take the custom response type. If else, we'll be adding the fallback to code. That's perfect. We'll do the same thing with post, form post. So we'll do if, and now we need to put the response mode. Let's copy response mode and create that argument. Response mode and sample value here will be form post. So we do if response mode size greater than 0. If there is value, we will take the value. If not, we'll put the fallback in here. And then we'll do the same thing for the client ID. The client ID won't have any fallback, so I'm just doing client underscore ID. And that is just, I'm going to put a sample value in here. And that will just take the client ID because we need to provide that. And then inside of here, we have the scope. This will be automatically the fallback scope. So let's copy this here and let's return, put this as an if statement. We will do if, and then I'm going to put scope, and I'm just going to make it empty for now. So I'm going to do if scope size is 0 because it's empty array, greater than 0, then I would take the scope and I would add a join filter to it, and I would make the separator be a space, and I will then add URI encode. And on else, I will have my fallback that we have created before. And we actually don't need the URI encode because the URI encode happens after we return the valid value with the join filter. And then we got that all in here. So now we got that URL. The only thing that we now need to have this actually go to a real login page and already trigger the native functionality is having the client ID. So for that, we're going to go to our Apple developer account. We're going to go on identifiers, and we are going to register a new identifier. We're going to go on service IDs. This will register sign in with Apple. We'll continue. The description will be sign in with Apple, my first SaaS, YouTube. Okay, and then the identifier will need to be your reverse domain style. So you want to have a valid identifier. It shouldn't be your bundle identifier. So let's see what ChatGPT suggests us, and that would be com.yourappname.app.web. So I'm going to create a bundle identifier that's unique and doesn't conflict with my mobile application. So I'm going to do com.myfirstsas.oauth, for example. com.myfirstsas.oauth. Let's copy that and let's continue. And let's register this service ID. Now I got the service ID. I can open the service ID, and now we need to allow this to work with sign in with Apple, and now we need to configure it. So now we got our app ID, we got all things set up. Now we need to register the return URLs. They're very important. And we need to register our subdomains. So right now there's no return URL that is registered, and that's something we will need to do. So with Apple Auth, we're always moving front end, back end. We're doing everything at the same time. There's not like this first, this first, this first. You do it all at once. But perfect. So let's go one step back, and then I'll show you how we continue with this. So what we need to do is we now need to start registering our success URLs where we can redirect to. So this is fine. We got the client ID, but we now need to, we will need to use this. So let's first go back to our auth page. And we have the formula set up. So I can go now here on the button. I will go on click, and then on click, I will do my Apple OAuth. And then I will add my response mode. That can be empty. Response type mode can be empty. Scope can be empty because we're already having it set up for Apple Auth automatically. But I need my client ID. So now if I go on this page already, we will see that it will say invalid OAuth client request, but we're making progress here. We're going to Apple. And in fact, if I open this on Safari, which is Apple's browser, which has all of those things pre-built in, we should see it already coming to life. Look at that. So we'll already do that. It will fail, but it will already have some of those things set up. So how do we do this now step by step? What we need to do is we need to register the URLs accordingly. So let's go back here. You see domains and subdomains. Enter a comma delimited list of domains. Provide your web domain and return. So we will need to provide the domain that this Apple Auth is running on, which will be OAuth, and then my first SaaS, and then all that. So let's copy this. And this is now the branch, and you want to set this up with any custom domain. So let's put up our branch, and then we're going to take the main branch, so without the OAuth in front of it. And then you want to also add your custom domain to this if you have a custom domain connected. Now we need to have a return URL. That is very important. And did it give us a return URL to add in here? I'm curious. It probably did not. Oh, no, we do have redirect URI, so that's good. So now we need to register our return URLs. For that, we need to have an OAuth page. And if you don't already know how OAuth works, I would highly suggest you take a look at the video I made about login with Google. It's the easiest way to understand how OAuth works and to get those things sorted out and figured out. But let's continue with this. And let's go here and take a look at the URL of this page. So as you can see, we need to do /Apple, because then we will run the logic for Apple. So let's copy this URL here, and let's go back and paste it in here. And then we do a comma. And now I'm going to remove the version without our branch. And then again, please add your custom domain to this. So now we can go on next. And now we'll say one or more domains are invalid because we don't need HTTPS for those. That is actually my bad. And now we should be able to register them. OAuth. Let's see. Domains and subdomains. Let's try just... Oh, we need to have the raw domain. We don't need a slash on it. Yeah, it's just the domain. So just have the branch domain and your staging, and then also your custom domain. And it's still, oh, it do have HTTPS. Okay, there you go. Let's go next. Interesting. .total.site. Oh, I have 2 times the same one. Okay, there you go. Now it should be good. Let's go on next. Beautiful. Let's go on done. Now we got this set up. Let's go on continue. And now it says, depending on your product, you may need to require multiple components from registering domains, from authentication. Okay, let's save this. Perfect. That should be the first step, and we should now be able to work with this. So let's take a look again. Here we have the client ID. The client ID will be our service ID. That's the reverse domain thing that we have created. So let's go to Apple here. Let's copy our service ID, and we will now need to go to our OAuth modal. And I think we forgot to register the redirect URI, but I'll be looking at that again. And then inside of here, we will put, yeah, there's no redirect URI. Okay. And then we got scope. We need to put the client ID in here, but we also did miss the redirect URI. So let's go here to the Apple OAuth formula, and let's look for the redirect URI. And you see the redirect URI was missed, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to put it right here. And then I'm going to copy redirect URI. I'm going to put the value in here, https://example.com. Then I will put the redirect URI inside of here. There you go. And then we'll do the description. Start Apple auth session. There you go. And now I can go back to auth. And now when I click on here, it will say something like invalid redirect URI. Of course it does, but that's the last thing missing. So the redirect URI should be branch specific, so it can work on staging and production. So in this example, I will do, I probably need to add the formula again. So let's copy the bundle ID and let's put the Apple auth in here. Yeah, and now I got the redirect URI. The redirect URI needs to be current URL. I'm going to then parse the URL. I'm going to get the host name. And then I'm going to do concatenate. I'm going to build the redirect URI. That will be https://, so it's secure, http secure. And then I will go to /OAuth, which is already our OAuth page that we have registered. If you don't understand why we have such a page, please watch the Login with Google video. This will explain how the OAuth process works. Then we do /OAuth/Apple, so we can run the logic specifically on Apple. And now I should be able to go on done, and I should be able to open this. If I click on continue with Apple, it will now allow me to log in with my Apple to my first SaaS. There you go. So now if we do this, there you go. And the redirect URL will be fun. We just need to reconfigure some things. But if we now go in here and we go continue with Apple, it will now say, hey, let's log in. We can now log into the application. And now we're going to go to an error page. That should not go to an error page. But you know why we're going to an error page? Because here's the thing why I said this will be fun. Because the redirect URI we're going to with Apple, you can't go to a redirect URI normally. You have to do a post request to a server. Nordcraft does not allow you to open a web page using a post request. So we need to have a middleware, a middle layer in this authentication process to make it work with Nordcraft. So for that, we need to actually go back into Login with Apple and we need to reconfigure this. So as you can see, we now need to take a look at this a little bit more deeply. So provide your web domain. We can go on back. Let's go and configure. Okay. Inside of here, we have those things set up. I think I can remove them. So the return URLs here need to be removed actually. And let's look for, it's just easier if we redo it again. So, or actually I can just, it's just bulk import, right? So let's remove the return URLs and let's add some new return URLs in here because the return actually has to go to a post request running on our server. That'll be fun. So let's continue. We need to now go to Xano. And in our API group where we have everything set up, we want to create a middle layer, a middleware kind of like handling that for us. So we will add a post request and we will add a custom endpoint and that will be a post request and I will call this OAuth/Apple/layer because that is the layer that we need to make this work with Nordcraft because normally out of the box it does not work. We want to have authentication disabled. If you were to use Subase, they already provide that layer for you. But with Xano, the beautiful thing is you control the layer and you have that ownability of it. So let's save that. And I want to add a description because that needs some description. Middle layer let's do the layer in caps because that's kind of like the whole name of the API. Middle layer for Apple login flow to fetch code. It'll make sense in a snap. Let's save this. And now let's publish this. This will be the server, and we will copy the URL. This will be the server that will receive our request from Apple, nothing this time. The return URL will need to be this server. It will not need to be our OAuth yet. So this will be fun, and you'll understand why in a moment. But I can go here to the return URLs, and I will put my Xano server inside of here. So let's go on next. And now, as you can see, we got it all. We got the return URL going here to the Xano server. So we will go on continue, and we will save this, and we will go on save. Okay, perfect. So now we have the Xano server URL. So now I will actually not do it like we did in here, because this will not work. So this is kind of like why I wanted to show you that, because it will not work. So let's put a string in here with our Xano server URL. There you go. And then we got the Xano server URL, and then we can fine tune it from there, but that'll be enough for now. Let's go on OK. And now we have the redirect URL. So now when I log in here, and let's do this again. If I now log in, continue with Apple, I will be able to sign in with password. And now it will say sign up not complete. Ooh, what's going on here? And I think that may have been how we have it configured. So let's go and inspect elements. Let's take a look at the console and let's see what's going on. So we're now initializing this. Let's do sign in with password. Okay, so that seems to give us an error. I'm curious if it still takes some time to successfully navigate. So let's take a look what happens when we go here and we see invalid web redirect URL. Okay, but we do have the valid one, but it can take a few minutes to register correctly. So let's double check. In here, we have cloud.nocodeproco.com. That's our API. And we do have it registered with Apple, but it can take a few minutes. Let's make sure we're saving that. Oh, we didn't save it. Okay, that's why it didn't save. So let's double check if we do have it in here. Yeah, we do have our Xano server URL in here. So that should do the thing. Let's try this again. Okay, and let's continue with Apple. Let's continue. And now, as you can see, we're going to the Xano server. But there is nothing in the URL, and this is why it said it won't work normally. Because the default way how Apple processes that is they give you the code, but they won't give you the code in the URL for security reasons. So you need to have a post request, a post server request in the middle where Xano is actually putting this in the body. So it will be hard for a website to fetch. So you need to have some middleware, some middle layers for that process. But now if I go to my request history, you see that just now we got a code in a body post request with our state. And we can validate if the state is correct, but we'll skip that. It's not necessarily needed. It's optional. So this gives us the code. And with this code now, we won't process this code with this request, but we will append this code to a specific URL. So now I want to set this up for production and staging. So let's go on text here and let's call this dev, and that will be a parameter. So if dev is true, we will do some different things. Let's publish this, and I want to provide dev in the URL. So when it opens it, we can send it through the URL. So in here, I'm going to put in tokenized text dev. This will allow us, oh no, actually, this should be moat. So we should put a mode in here. Let's make it mode. There you go. We'll save this and then we'll turn this into mode. That will be text. Yeah, so then I can pass on the mode. So there you go. So now I can call this API with a slash and then the mode. And then based on if this is in a branch or not, we can then have a different request come back. So let's go here to our redirect URI. And in this example, we will probably need to register 2 options. So let's take this redirect URI here. Let's do a slash to it. Let's turn this. Now let's take this and turn this into a concatenate. Concatenate. There you go. So we do have that here. And now we'll put the mode. So we'll do if branch name and our main, but that has nothing to do. So if branch name, and that may be actually a bad way to identify this, but we will need to take a look at that. So if branch name equals main, then I'm going to add production / production. If else, then I'm going to do development. So I'm sending a request with that appropriate path to it. So now we can have a different server response based on if we're working on it or if we are in production, kind of like making that easier. But now we need to register the appropriate ones. So we need to go back to configure, and now we have our Xano server URL. So let's copy that again, and we need to put production and the other one. So let's add new ones inside of here, and let's go here and let's do this, and I will do production, and then I will add a comma, and I will do development. Okay, then I'll do a next, and then we'll see we got that in here. And let's go on done, and let's continue, and then we do save. So now we have that set up, so we can have different URLs based on that, because this will be important because we need to return HTML with here. And now I'm gonna go on Stack Overflow and take a look. Content type for HTML in HTTPS. Content type header for HTML, text HTML. There you go. That's good, because we will need to actually return an HTML file that will then append our redirect. This will be fun. So what we want to do is, now we have this successful redirect, and we want to create a variable here called HTML. And inside of here, we need to take a specific HTML file. I will copy that here. What it does, it's adding a header that will force a redirect to go back to the Nordcraft side, and then in case that doesn't work, we also have JavaScript running in it, forcing the redirect as well, so we're better safe than sorry. So now we're going to paste that HTML code inside of here. Beautiful. And you know that we can just kind of like call this redirect in the title, redirect to OAuth page. And then I got this URL in here in this tokenized text. So we're just going to copy the URL from the string in here. I'm going to add a replace filter. Okay, I will add a replace filter, and then we will need to replace this with a URL that we want this to go to. I don't have one yet, so let's just save it for now, and let's update this. Now this is returning HTML. Now it needs to do the redirect. Right now it's redirecting to nothing. It will go to an empty page, but you will see what I mean. And it will also not work because we're returning this right now as a text payload. But if I go back here to my authentication page, and I'm just going back here, yeah, let's send that, and let's go back. There you go. And I go continue. Let's reload the page to make sure everything is fine. Okay, let's go continue with Apple. And now I can sign in with my password. And now, as you can see, I'm getting the content back from the API. Now, this doesn't help me. I need it back as HTML. So we want to set the appropriate content headers. So I'm going to take the content headers for HTML, and I'm going to go back to Xano, and I'm doing set HTTP headers. And I'm going to now put the header in here to return HTML. I will publish this, and now what this will be doing is it will do a redirect. Now let's have it redirect to example.com. So let's do https://example.com. Okay, let's apply this. Let's save. Let's publish. Okay, and now there you go. We can go here and we can go back. Oh, I need to take the web application URL so we can test this correctly. I can go back to Safari. I can put this inside of here, and then I can go and continue with Apple. And then I can continue, and I can log in with my password. And then I'm going to be redirected. So now there is no token in the URL, so we can't really process this. So we need to set this up as well. So let's go one step back, and inside of here in Xano, we want to now register what we're getting in the body. Now, primarily, if we take a look at the body request that it does, it sends us the value code. So we can add an input in here called code that will be required, and that way we're registering the code because it will also fetch the body. And the cool hack is it can also take it from the URL if you have the same name and then you have tokenized text in the URL in Xano. It's a hidden feature almost. But there you go. So now we get the code, and now I want to build a staging/production URL. So let's do a conditional here, and then you can do this with your custom domain as well. But I want to take a look at mode equals production. Okay, let's save this. So let's move this up here, this conditional statement. If the mode is production, I want to create a variable called target, or let's call destination URL. Destination URL. Okay. And then inside of here, on this destination URL, I'm going to take the destination URL. This will be our OAuth page, and that will be /apple. So let's modify that to be /apple. And then let's copy that. And we need this on the main branch, right? So let's copy our main branch here, and then we can go back. Okay, so let's go back to Xano, and now I will put our main branch, and this could be your custom domain, but I don't have one yet. Okay, let's save that. Now I'm going to create a duplicate of this variable. Important is with the same name, so that based on the value you provided, it will give you a different URL, and then I'm going to put my branch in here, OAuth/. Okay, and then we're now at the big editor. There you go, fixed. Let's save that. So now based on if we're in production, based on which mode we are, we're getting to the appropriate branch. So on production, we'll be redirected to production. On development, we'll be redirected to our OAuth development branch. And then we get this destination URL, and now we can, we can go to it. So when I go to this URL replacement, I'm going to put my destination URL in here. I'm going to add a concatenate filter, and I'm going to add a separator of a question mark, code equals, because I'm about to add a query parameter to it. That will be our separator, and the value I'm adding will be the code. So it will then produce HTML saying question mark code equals, and then I have the code. So we have this proxy in the middle returning this appropriately and going to the page. Now, in case you don't believe me, let's try it out right now. So we now want to go back to our auth page here. Let's copy that. And then let's go back here, and this should now work perfectly. So let's open this. Let's go and continue with Apple. Now I continue with my password. And now as you can see, I'm going to the OAuth page and I have the code inside of here. Isn't that cool? So now I got it to work with this proxy in the middle, with this middleware. Now I need to exchange this code here that I get with a token, with data for that user. So the next step will be fetching the code. So for that, we want to go back to our auth page, our OAuth page, and we already have this code parameter registered, which is great because most of them use the same naming conventions. So let's just add a text area inside of here so I can copy the code. I will go to the value of the text area and get the code here, which is already a query parameter that's registered. Again, take a look at the Google Auth video. This will really help you when setting this up. But let's go a few steps back. Seems like I can't go just a few steps back. I gotta go all in, but I should be able to just, yeah, now I'm getting the code. So that's the code I need. Now with this code, I will be able to you know, kind of like get the data for the user. So now we will need to take a look at how we do that. So we got the code. Now we need to get the information. So for this, we get handle callback and exchange, decode the ID token. We don't need a refresh token. So in this example here, handle callback and exchange code via curl curl. So we need to run this curl command that gives us the redirect URL, so we can provide that, sends the authorization code, and then gets the code from the callback here. And then we will put the client secret in here, and we will put the client ID, and this will give us all the information. So, and I don't think we need to, we probably want to then create this JWT token for the client secret. Okay, gotcha, yeah. So we want to do this curl, and then there will be a little thing that we need to do once we have this curl set up. But we want to copy this curl command here. Feel free to screenshot this when you see this on your screen right now, so you can use it. We'll copy this curl, which is auth/token, which will give us an auth token from Apple, and that will provide sufficient information to identify the user. But we need to create a new endpoint for that because we're already done with this. So let's create a new endpoint here that is called oauth/apple/continue. And this will be a, how do we do the other ones? Google OAuth continue, this will be a GET request then. This will say exchange Apple auth code for access token, and we will use a Xano access token. I should also add my YouTube tag to it. Okay, let's save that. So now we got everything we need, and now we need to add an input here of code that is type text that is required, and we'll add that input. Beautiful. Now in here, we will need to, you know, first of all, get the user information. So let's do an API call, external API request, and we're going to import the curl that we got from ChatGPT. Let's import this. Now we have the client ID. That should come from an environment variable, the client secret, the code. We can already link that because the code should come from the code input. The grant type will always be authorization code. The redirect URI should be dynamic. And then we have the client secret, which is something that we want to programmatically actually do. So let's save that. And now we need to create a new tab because there are a bunch of things that I want to save in environment variables to properly get all this data together. So let's go back here to our settings and let's go to our environment variables. Okay, let's add a new variable, SAS/apple/client_ID, client ID. Now the client ID that we already know with Apple is our identifier for login with Apple. So we'll take our identifier and that will be our client ID stored easily in an environment variable. Now we'll add another environment variable that will be SAS_apple_client_secret. Okay, Now there is not really a client secret. So we need to see what makes the client secret, because it says client secret here. But what is the client secret? The client secret is this JWT token that we will need to create. So what does the JWT token need? It needs our key ID, and it will need our team ID, and it will need our client ID. So we need to actually have the key ID, the client key ID, and the team ID. So for that, what we want to do is we want to go back to Xano. Where did it go? And we need to do client key ID. Now, where do we get the key ID? We get that with the Apple Developer Platform. So we will have this in here, and we have this ID here, but there is no key ID for that. So we will probably need to go to keys, and we will need to create a key to have this properly set up. So we need to create a key, and we can call that my first SaaS. And we can then do Apple. We don't need push notifications, but we want sign in with Apple. We go on configure, and now we're selecting that appropriate application. Now, it doesn't seem like it lists our one yet. So, and to enable, allow users to authenticate, configuration is required. Let's double check. Let's go back to ChatGPT. So we created that service ID, sign in with Apple. We have the service ID. Now we need to create a new key. And we will probably need to link it a little bit later. So let's try that again. And then let's also retry the page, refresh the page, because Apple is actually pretty bad when it comes to those things. But let's create a key ID because it is a single page application. Let's call this my first SaaS. Apple, that's good enough. My first SaaS. Okay, and then I do sign in with Apple, and then I should be able to configure, and I still only have one key ID. These key IDs are available with sign in with Apple by being grouped with the primary app ID selected above. Users will see your primary app's icon terms. Oh, okay, gotcha. So here's what's going on. We need to create actually an app ID. ChatGPT didn't have that all figured out, because if I go to identifiers here, I do have my identifier for Sassaful, which was something I did before. Let's look at that again. Yeah, I have my Sassaful demo. I have this as a bundle ID, and there is the setting login with Apple here that has it grouped somewhere. Right? It's somehow grouped. I couldn't tell you right now specifically how, because it was made a long time ago, but it is grouped. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, it's grouped with a primary app ID. So here's the thing. We need to have a primary bundle identifier for this application. And if you have a mobile application, you want to do this with the bundle ID that Despia gives you. So let's create an app ID and let's continue. And this will be a mobile app. Let's continue. So now this description will be mobile app, my first SaaS. And then the bundle ID should be let's do com.despia.my first. And this is if you are with Despia. If you're not using Despia, you want to make up your own one, but then later on you want to make sure that you get that imported to Despia. So it doesn't hurt creating a Despia account using the one that Despia generates for a project, just so that it's set up for the future in case you want to ever turn this into a mobile application. Let's do my first SaaS. There you go. Now what we need to allow is we need to do app attest, app groups in case you're using Despia. In case not, leave that out, but we do app attest, app groups, associated domains, and we will do push notifications broadcast, push notification broadcast capability, and then we'll do, where to go? Sign in with Apple. I will edit, And then there you go, server notifications, we won't need that, but this will be the primary app ID. We'll save this and continue, and then we register. Now we need to go to our service ID. So we go to service IDs, we'll take the My First SaaS, we'll configure this, and it will now need to be linked to the mobile app My First SaaS app ID. So we have this linked with our mobile app, but it doesn't affect it. It will still work on the web. So now it's linked with the correct ID. It still works, but now we can actually issue the key. So we can go here to the key, and I can call this My First SaaS. And then I will do sign in with Apple. I will configure, and that will be now the mobile app My First SaaS. I will save this, I will continue, and now I'm going to register this. I'm now getting the key ID. So let's go back here on settings and let's put the key ID inside of here. Then we'll add another variable for SaaS underscore Apple underscore team underscore ID. We'll put the team ID in here. Now, where do we get the team ID? You get the team ID by actually looking in the top right corner of your Apple developer account, because you have the team ID right here. That's your team ID. And we'll put the team ID in here. We'll add another variable that will be SaaS underscore Apple underscore, and this will be a key. And we'll do secret key. Secret key. There you go. So now we are going back in here, and now we will download our secret key. Okay, I got the secret key. There you go. I will now open this with other. Okay, let's hide that. It won't open. Let's just try it. Oh yeah, actually I can do it here. Let's open this with text edit. Okay, let's open that. And now I got my secret key. So we're going to copy the secret key. There you go. And now I'm going to go back to Xano. There you go here. And I'm going to put the secret key inside of here. Let's save that. And now I'm saving all my variables. Let's do save, 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 save. So now I got it all securely here in environment variables. Okay, and now when we run this, we can generate our JWT token. So Xano doesn't give you a JWT, it gives you a JWS or a JWE. So we will need to use a JWS here when working with Apple. So we'll do a JWT, and it has the algorithm and it has the body payload. So we will need to generate that token to then call the API, because it needs to build that key. There are many layers of security when it comes to working with Apple's APIs. So we'll do a JWS, and I'm doing JWS encode. This encodes the payload as a JWS. So now we got the headers. We will need to set the headers. We will select the algorithm and our key ID from the Apple developer account for our headers. I'm just going to paste the payload in here with filters. The algorithm will stay the same, but the key will come from our environment variable. So I will do SaaS underscore Apple, and that will be the team ID. And I'll put the team ID in here. That will be the key ID, oh no, it will not be the team ID, it will be the key ID. My bad. There you go. It will not be that. It will be the Apple client key ID. There you go. Apple client key ID. Let's apply that. And now we will need to do a few other things. Now there are the claims. We want to set up the claims. So let's go here. I will copy the claim payload. And then the timestamp. I know Apple always has different kinds of timestamps, so we will take a look at that. Let's put the claims in here, and we'll do that with a filter. Now the issuer, that will be your team ID. So we can go to SaaS underscore Apple, and we will take our team ID. We'll apply that. Now we will leave those empty. And then I don't know what I tried to set in here, but that does not look correct. This is the AUD. This is what we're trying to do with it. So let's go back here, and let's put the AUD inside of here, and the value will be the Apple website. That will be the identify website where you will do the authentication request on. So let's go back here, put that inside of here, let's apply, and now we got that here. Now we need the client ID. The client ID is very simple. We'll do Apple underscore client ID, and then we have the client key ID for that key for this client authentication system. Now we got that. Now we need the key. The key itself will be Apple, and that will be the Apple SaaS Apple secret key. The algorithm is ES, so we'll do ES to 56. There you go. And then time to live can be 20. And then I'm just going to call that token, or client underscore secret. There you go. Now the last missing piece is the timestamp, and that timestamp is a little bit specific. So let's go back here, and for those, I'm going to say, what format does the timestamp need to be? Okay, and then we'll see. Okay, that is the format. That will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It will be 10. So Xano doesn't give us the precise one, so we will need to divide it by a few to get the correct number. So let's go in here, and then we'll see once we get it correct. Let's go back here. Let's just save it for now, and now we're going to experiment with a stop and debug to get the correct timestamp. So let's save this. Let's put the stop and debug here, and let's put a now. We'll do now, and now we're adding a filter. Divide by, I think we need to do 100. Okay, let's save this and let's try running this. Okay. We will need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11. Okay. And then we'll do 1, 2, 3, 9. This is 10, right? 1, 2, 3, 6. Okay, so we need by 1,000. So we need to divide it by 1,000. So let's go in here, and then we will need to divide it by 1,000, and then we can just apply this, and then we would need to add another filter of round up, round to a decimal with optimal precision, round a decimal up, because that is very important, because otherwise it will be in the past and it will cause you many issues. Let's run that. Okay, let's go back to ChatGPT. Is this valid? Put that in here. Yes. Okay, beautiful. Now we'll repeat. We'll go to the API. No, not the API. I was scared for a moment. No, that's the JWT token. We'll need to have that over the API. And now we're going to here with the current timestamp. The current timestamp will be now. And we will add a filter of divide by 1,000, and then we're going to apply, and then when we divide this by 1,000, we're going to add the round up, the seal. Okay, and then when we do that with the expiration, we'll be taking now, and we will add the same thing again, divide by 1,000. Then we'll be rounding up, so we'll be adding the seal. We'll apply, and now after that we're going to add to it. So we're going to add 5,000. Okay, there you go. So it'll have some lifetime, and then we'll save that. Lifespan, okay, and then we need to take the client ID. When we do the API call again, we'll need to take the client ID. This will be Apple underscore client ID. We'll apply that. Then we need to get the client secret. That's the client secret, the JWT token, or JWS, because it's the secret key that was generated. And then we got the code, the authorization grant. Now we need only the redirect URI, which should be provided through an input. So we'll save this. We got the code. Now we need another text of a redirect underscore URI that will be required. Then we can provide the information. Now I'm going back to the API call, take the redirect URI, link it with the redirect URI. I'm going to apply this. I'm going to save. And now we will see if this API will be successful. So now I can delete the stop and debug here. I won't need that. And now let's provide some information for this. So when we got that, but that's the wrong one. So let's go on this one here. I will copy this string. I will go back in here. I will put the code. And then I need the redirect URI, and that is not the redirect URI that I'm being redirected to Nordcraft. That is our Xano layer API. Remember the layer API that we have, but it will need to be dependent on if it is production or development. So for that, we need to take a look at our SaaS API, and let's just, this was development now. So let's go to OAuth. Where did that be? OAuth. Oh yeah. And then we'll copy that URL. So now I will go in here and I will put the URL, and then I will do /development. Okay. And let's see if that works. The code has expired or has been revoked. It did expire. There is a lifespan to it, but it already looks great. We just gotta go through it one more time. So let's go here to our application /auth. Let's continue with Apple. Let's continue. Okay, let's copy that. Let's be fast. Paste that here. Let's run. And now we got the information, and we got this thing called ID token. I want to copy that. And because you see it starts with EY, we see it's base 64 encoded JSON. But let's copy that because this includes the user information, which is very important. So now inside of here, after I have this API, I want to create a variable, and I want to call this, I only need the ID underscore token. Okay, and we can even tune it, but let's just define a variable with the ID token here, and that will be API response, result, ID token. We'll save that. Now, for testing purposes, I want to clone this, and I want to have another ID token inside of here because I can only run it once and it's a pain to do so. So let's save that here. Perfect. And now I got an ID token actually to work with. So I'm just going to disable the API, but I now got my ID token. This is important. So now I will create a variable here with user underscore detail. User detail. That will be the ID token, but it will be base 64 decoded. So we'll save that. And now I'm going to go under here and I'm going to add a stop and debug. And that stop and debug will return the user detail. Okay, let's run that. Now we get, oh, we actually get binary data back. Ooh, we need to decode the ID token, but we don't necessarily need to fully decode it. We just need to be doing different stuff. So we can't just decode it. We need to get the second item of it, because in the middle it will show the information. So we do 0, period 1. This will give us the second item. ID token 1. Oh, we need to add a split filter. My bad. So we got the ID token. We'll add a split filter based on the period. Okay, we'll apply that. Now this will give us an array of is it 2 of 3 items? I don't see 3 in here, but okay, if it says there's 3. Oh yeah, it's this one. Okay, gotcha. That's the first one. That's the second one. We want the second one. So because arrays start at 0, the second one will be 1. So in here, I'm going to add a filter. I'm going to do get filter, and I'm getting the path 1. This will give us the second item. There you go. Now this is base64 encoded. So I'm adding a filter of base64 decode, so it removes the formatting. Now we will get something that looks like JSON with my email in it. And then inside of here, the last step will be adding another filter of JSON decode. So we actually encode it. No, decode, yes, because it is encoded. It needs to be decoded to be real JSON. And now I got JSON. And now, as you can see, I got my hash, I got my email verified, noun supported, the auth time, and I got email. But importantly, I get the email. Apple won't give you the name, even if you request for it for security purposes. But you get the email, and that's already plenty of what you need to do the authentication. So now inside of here, I'm going to create a variable called user_email, and that will just be user detail, and I'm going to take the email. Let's save that. And now, as you can see, I can do user detail. I can save that. I will get that email. Now with this email, I want to do the login flow. For that, we want to take a look at what we have done with Google Auth and how our normal login flow works, so we can kind of like copy that over. So let's take a look at Google Auth. Where did Google Auth go? Google continue. Okay. And as you can see, what we're doing is we're taking a look if the user exists. If the user does exist, based on the email, we're then getting the record, and then we're issuing an auth token down here. If not, we're adding a new record in here, and then we're putting on the free plan, and then we create a new Polar customer ID so that they can pay in case they want to upgrade. And then we will edit that in the SaaS users database to put the Polar ID in there. So that's exactly what we want to do in here as well. So let's go inside of here, and oh, my computer is starting to go very slow. So let's remove all of the tabs and close all the stuff that we won't need. Okay, we can remove this one. And there you go. I should have been possibly making a break because I don't want to lose this video. So let's make a little cut. So our connection and capacity is back, and we can keep working on the API. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to use Xano's native has record. And we're taking a look at our SaaS users database with our users in them. Now we want to look not by ID, but by email, and we'll take a look, we'll cross-reference the email based on the user email that comes from Apple. We'll save this, we'll ignore this, and then I will rename this output user_exists. We will take a look, does that user exist in our database? There you go. Now, what we want to do is, there is another thing that we possibly want to look for. Let's go back to the stop and debug, and let's return the user detail one more. The user detail, we can save that. And as you can see, there is this SUBID, and I want to ask ChatGPT if it is a good idea to use this ID for identification purposes. Let's see. I always go to their landing page. I don't like that. Okay. Let's say, is a good ID to use for linking a user record to their Apple account? Let's see, they're referring appears to be the sub value from Apple sign, and here's how that works. Is unique stable identifier. If the user revokes access in their Apple ID and signs it later again, they may get a new sub. Okay, so I mean, you can change your email, but you're not really changing your iCloud email with your Apple account that much. So let's have both. Let's check with both. So to make this look nicer, with Google, it's kind of like your Gmail is bound to the Google account. You're not changing your Gmail every week. With Apple, you can do that. You can change your email. You can link a custom email to it and all those kinds of things. So I want to also have the user ID. So under the user detail, I want to create a variable called Apple user ID. And that Apple user ID will be coming from the user detail, and that will be the SUB. That's the subscriber ID. And then I will take a look at the Apple user ID, and I will run this with the Apple user ID. There you go. So now I got the unique ID, and it should always be the same. Let's double check, but this will always be the same. Let's see what, I closed it too fast. But let's open this again. Is this sub ID always constant? For login with Apple. Things and like aka sub from the ID token. Yes, the value uniquely identifies the user. Okay, so that's good enough. That's plenty. So we want to adjust the database. So let's duplicate this tab and let's add that Apple subscription ID into our SaaS database. So let's go to SaaS. And now we're going to add a new value here, Apple underscore sub. Okay, we'll add that. That's optional right now. We don't have any. But we can now go to our API, and we need to actually delete the hash record now. And let's also remove the stop and debug while we're on it, because now we need to look based on multiple conditions. We need to look based on the email or the sub ID, because if they change the email, we can, we need to adjust that in our system, but we also want them to only have one email. So when they change the email on their Apple account from hey@despe.com to hey@nocodeproco.com, but the ID is already linked to their Apple account, we will then change their user account from hey@nocodeproco.com to from hey@despe.com to hey@nocodeproco.com, for example. So now we need to do a query all records, because that gives us a flexible way, more flexible way to look with specific conditions and then still get a true or false if it exists or not. So let's add a condition. There will be email equals the user email, and then we do or the Apple sub will equal the Apple user ID. And then the output, so it is a true or false, will be exists. So we can look by exists based on the return type and the return settings in a query as record as well. We'll ignore that one. And now we have the query all records. And I will just rename the output user underscore exists. We'll save this. Now I can add a stop and debug again inside of here. And that will be user exists. And I will run this, and you will see the user does not exist. So if the user does not exist, we're now all of a sudden adding a conditional statement, and this will be conditional. There you go. The conditional will be user exists equals true. If it's true, we will, just get the user based on the, in this example, probably the subscription ID or the user ID, but we will need to do a generic version for that. Right now the user does not exist, so let's start with the else. The else will be there will be add record. We will add a new record to SaaS users, and we will do our authentication flow, right? The email will come from user email. The code will be empty. We won't need to set the OTP. The plan will be free. That's our default. The Polar customer, we don't have it yet. The Apple subscription ID will be Apple user ID. So we're linking everything, and I'm going to output this as user underscore record. So I can save this. So now once I have the user record, it will return the user ID. And with that user ID, I want to create the Polar customer. So let's take a look at my custom functions here. I may have too many, but let's see. Utility, custom functions, create Polar, create customer. We created that in a different video before, so take a look at our 4-hour SaaS course. But we need to have the email, so that will be the user record email because we just created it. The external ID, that will be the user record ID. That's the ID that the user has in our database. The metadata, we will add user underscore ID to it. So we'll do, let's see, how do we do it in here? We have it called user underscore ID, right? So I'm going to add a set filter here, and I'm going to set a parameter of user underscore ID, and then the value will be user record, and that will be the user ID of our database. And then sandbox will be true because we're testing. Now please make this into production once you're ready to work with production. Let's save this. There you go. Now we got this Polar customer ID. So we can run we can return this as Polar underscore customer. There you go. Let's save that. And now we want to do a stop and debug here to return the Polar customer. Polar customer. Let's save that. And let's run that. A customer with this email already exists. Okay, this is fun. So let's, for debugging purposes, have it be any email. Yeah, let's duplicate this because this is kind of like always fun when you work with those kinds of things. Let's do appleauth@despia.com. I know that does not exist because I just need to have an ID for that user so I can work with it, right? So let's run that again. Missing variable 1. Customer exists. Let's do a stop and debug here. User exists. Let's run this. That's true. I want this to be false. So let's do apple123@despia.com. Oh, but we're looking based on the ID in the database. I got it. So we need to wipe out the one with the Apple subscription ID because now we're looking by subscription ID, so the system is working. So we need to run this again. Okay, now it's false. This is great. So now I can actually get rid of the stop and debug here. And I can hide this one. This is just for test purposes. We'll run this. I will get the Polar customer created, and then as you can see, it will give us the external ID and it will give us the Polar ID, right? So now we want to do in here an edit record in our database for SaaS users. And then we want to get this based on the user record ID for the record that we created above here. And now we'll remove the code, but the Polar customer ID will come from Polar customer response ID. That's the customer ID. And then I'm going to return this as user underscore record. So now we're correctly assigning the user record here in case they do not exist yet in our database. Now the issue, or not the issue, but the thing that you want to fine tune at some point, which we will be making a video about a little bit later, is if the user already exists in your Polar account, your whole authentication process will crash. So just keep that in mind, but this is why we're doing what we're doing here. So let's delete this. So now in this example, we have it added. So now this will work perfectly. So now if the user exists true, let's go back and put our stop and debug in here. If the user does exist and that is true, user exists, let's run this again, it should be true. True, if the user exists true, we want to do another get record on our SaaS users database. And we want to look this up based on, actually, no, we don't want to do a get record because it's limited. We want to go in here and we want to do a an edit record. But first we need to do a query all records. That will be fun. So let's do a query all records from SaaS users. And the statement will clear all records in the database. Oh, not clean all records. No. We need to do a query. Query all records. Yeah. Okay. We got to query all records for the SaaS users. The query will be like we have before. The email will either equal the user email, or the Apple sub will equal the Apple user ID. And then the output with the output settings will be single. So I'm just getting one record, not a whole list. And then I'm going to return this as user underscore record. And I can save this. And I will ignore. And I will save. And now I'm getting the user record. So let's put a stop and debug here on the user record. Let's do a user record. Now, because the email that is bound to the Apple account every time the user signs in could change, because right now it's Apple123, but in reality my Apple account has hey@nocodeprocode.com bound to it. We want to also adjust that email in the database so we're always emailing them to the latest Apple associated email. For that, we want to now add an edit record in here, and we will edit the record based on SaaS users. And we will go inside of here for, we will look for ID, and the ID will come from the user record ID that we just queried above here. And now in here, we won't do the code, but what we will do is we will update the email, and the email will be the latest user email from Apple. I will now return this as user underscore record. I will save this, and now when I do the stop and debug, you see the user record I'm returning will have the latest email. Now I will hide my sample email. I will enable my real email. I will edit this and say sample data for testing. I will save this, and then I will run this again. And now you see I'm updating the record and getting the latest email. So, you know, the user is always updating their credentials if those things change on their Apple account. But it's still bound to the account ID. So if the account ID is not set, but they do have the email set for some reason, so let's say they already have an existing account with Google, right? But their Apple account has the same email, but there's no Apple subscription ID, it will then find the appropriate account and then, you know, edit the email, and it should also edit the Apple subscription ID, because in case it was not set. So we need to actually go to the edit record, and I need to go to the Apple sub, because this is also getting the record if the email matches, meaning the user hey@nocodeprocode.com signed in initially with Google, and now they sign in with Apple. Now we need to link their account appropriately, right? So if they sign in with Google and now they sign in with Apple, we now add the Apple ID to it, so it carries the Apple ID. Now, if their Apple ID changes, we will change that as well, and then it would be unlinked from the Google account, which is... Should we do that? I think maybe the way we do it right now, that's a decision you want to do. I think the way we do it right now is pretty balanced, or we want to improve the Google one. But changing the email makes sense. But then if you already have an email in here and you already signed in with Google, and then that is on hey@nocodeprocode.com, and now you sign in with Apple, and it will now sign in with hey@nocodeprocode.com. If you change that email and it doesn't link with the Apple subscription ID, if it is not creating a new account, so if Apple isn't your primary way of logging in, it will then just bind it to the email. So if you change your Apple email, it will not unlink your login with Google, which makes sense. So I think we only should assign the Apple sub ID into this database record if the user is trying to log in the first time with Apple, and Apple will be their preferred sign-in method, because otherwise we can have infinite account sharing at some point. So I do actually like it this way. And you can tune this. This is just giving you the idea how to set it up. You can customize this and adjust this to your liking. And this is just kind of like to show you how you could do some of those things. But that's essentially it. Now we need to issue an access token. So we'll do auth token. We'll do an auth token. Where did the auth token? Create authentication token. And that will load a little bit in Xano. And now it just timed out. And now it's there. Okay. And this will now come from our SaaS users. No extra, so let's make that empty. Expiration will be this amount times 30 for 30 days. So the user will be logged in for 30 days. We can close this. I'll put that in here. Then now the ID will come from the user record ID. And then we will create this auth_token, this auth token. So now the user record is in here with the data, and the user record is in here. So it will always, no matter from which direction we're coming, we'll always get the appropriate data. So now with this API, what we will do is we will return the auth token. We will save this. And now we have this way where the user logs in with Apple, they're actually getting an auth token. Look at that. And they can log in with that. So now let's get it up and running for production. This means renaming this API and reverting that on everything, called Apple_auth_API. We'll save this and update all references. Let's enable this. Let's enable the ID token. Let's disable the sample ID token, and we can just delete it. We won't need it anymore. That was just for testing. You can keep it if you want. Then we have the user ID, the sample user email. We'll delete that one. We won't need it anymore. We're not in production anymore. Okay, my computer is freezing again. This is great. Okay, come on. And now we got the existence. We are getting the SaaS users. We're then creating the authentication token. So I'm going to click on publish, and then I'm going to make another cut because I think Xcode open or something like that. My computer is also laying in the sun right now. That could be it. So we'll wait till this all cools down a little bit. There you go. But now we will need to implement this on the front end. So now that we have the authentication token all working and we got it all set up, we want to go to our authentication page here, and we want to set up the workflow. So let's start by adding our new API on the front end. I will go on my connected Xano group, and as you can see here, I got my my Apple continue. So that Apple continue will be a GET request, and it will have two parameters. It will have the redirect URI, and it will have the code. So let's start with the code. We'll get that from the URL parameter code, and then in here, we will add the redirect URI. The redirect URI will not be the one current page that we're on, but it will be the server for the layer API. So we will need to go in here, and we will need to take that formula for this layer API. That is the proxy. So I'm going to leave that out because I can actually get this from the authentication page, because we already have created that URL before. So let's go and click here, and let's copy this formula here to create the URL. Let's go back on the auth page. Let's go to the API, and let's go to parameters, and I'm going to paste it in here, and that will give me the appropriate development or production API. When I run that, we will see we won't be able to get the response because it is invalid, right? Because it will not work. So in case it does not work, we can then redirect to a failure page, but it will work because, we will provide a valid token. So in this example, we want to turn off auto fetch, and we want to turn off server side fetching. There you go. Or we can turn this on actually. We can turn those on. because they run both at the same time. One of them will fail, this one will fail, and then, you know, this one will just go through. And if this is go through, we will have an event to then redirect, right? So let's actually do this. I need the number for 30 days in seconds, but we're going to go on events on this Apple continue. On success, I'm going to set session cookies. The access token will come from the Apple API continue data that will just return the token. The expires in will be 30 days, and then on success, I'm going to go to URL, and that will go to / because that is where my dashboard is on. Like you can see with the login with Google that we're doing here. On success, we go to /. So that should be it. And we'll see if this works. Let's hope. Let's say, not if, let's say, let's see this working, right? We got to be optimistic here. So let's copy the URL. Let's go to this page here. Let's do the login process. I'm scared. Okay, let's continue with Apple. I'm going to log in. Okay. And I'm logged in. Look at that. I'm logged in under hey@nocodeprocode.com. And this is amazing. Look at that. I'm logged in. And this is how you do login with Apple. And now I'm logged in. It was successful. How beautiful is that? And the amazing part about this, if I open this now here on my mobile device, it's going to be even more tremendous. Let's put this in here. Look at that. So I got the application here. Ooh, and I click on login with Apple. Look at that. And I'm getting the native modal, and then I can do Face ID. Now it's signing me in. It's doing all the redirects, and now as you can see, I'm logged in. And this is how you add login to Apple to your application. It is a process, I'm not going to lie, and it's precisely because it is such a process. If you need some extra help with that, I would highly suggest you and invite you to take a look at NoCodeProCode.com. This is where we will fix all your issues, all the things that come up. We will help you troubleshoot any errors in your no-code application. And take a look at that, NoCodeProCode.com. The link to join the waitlist is also in the video description below and in the pinned comment. Take a look at that if you're ever stuck with your no-code / visual development application and you're stuck at the hardest parts, like implementing something like login with Apple. Definitely join. For the small investment of $129, you can get daily help from me in our group Zoom meetings. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that. I hope this video was very helpful. I can't wait to see all your login with Apple modals in your web and mobile application. Thank you so much for all your support, for all your comments, for sharing this video with the people that you love. And thank you so much for all your support, for all those years that we've been doing this together here on YouTube. It really means the world to me. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.